The Chronicles of the Crisis, the series. The Osiris Myth. End of an era. Tensions in the Duat are higher than ever. The era of peace and prosperity that began with Osiris' reign as pharaoh is in danger of falling apart, and it's due to the king's own actions. Set's outburst in the last council meeting was only the beginning. The Dark Deity was rightfully angry to find out that he was being cheated of his place in the council, but his short temper has cost him a lot. Osiris and Isis are pretty convinced he can be dangerous now, and they've made efforts to ban him from the palace entirely. Some pretty low-scale cave deities, known as the Flesh Eaters, have been brought up to act as guardsmen around the palace. They're really just monsters that serve the gods of the Duat, though they're called deities by the mortals. Poor Nephthys is caught in the middle of it all. She wants to agree with her sister, as she's extremely close with Isis, but she ignores Isis's insistence that Set is dangerous, as she loves her husband and trusts him. When Set is essentially banned from attending councils, Nephthys still attends, and makes sure to tell Set everything that goes on. Because of this, Isis and Osiris start to grow wary of Nephthys as well. They don't see her as a threat, but they recognize they need to watch their words around her now. Set appreciates that his wife is there for him, though he does feel guilty that she's essentially outcasting herself for his sake. He tries to continue business as usual. For the next several weeks, Set continues his nightly duties on the Sun Barge, ignoring the fact that councils are taking place far beneath his feet. It helps to dull his rage a little. Ra isn't nearly as distant as the other gods are. Set was already his favorite to begin with, as the Dark Deity has worked closely with him for years. The great sun god practically raised him, too, so Ra doesn't see him as a threat. Thoth has been spewing nonsense for years. Why should he listen now? When the nightly journey is over, Set's day, well, night, is done. He returns home, to Nephthys. To get there, though, he has to pass the palace. Occasionally, Set will stop to see if anyone is around outside. Will Osiris be there? He isn't sure why he bothers, but he does know that he wants to end this mess. He hates it. He just wants things to go back to the way they were. Sometimes, having nothing to do during the day can be both a blessing and a curse. He usually sleeps away the first few hours, as the nightly fight in the underworld exhausts him. The rest of the day, however, is a waiting game. Nephthys spends her time with him when she can, but Set is often left alone to stew in his thoughts. He eventually grows bored being cooped up in their home. I mean, what kind of chaotic god sits around and does nothing all day? So, he heads off to spend his hours elsewhere. He'll probably be back before his wife comes home, anyway. The Dark Deity simply walks around the Duat, trying to clear his head. Maybe he'll mess with a couple mortals or something. Nothing too malicious, of course. Or maybe not. The other gods are already hostile enough with him at the moment, so he doesn't really want to add accidentally set a mortal on fire to their list of nebulous reasons for ganging up on him. On his walk, he sees Sobek in the Nile, spots Sekhmet prowling through the grasslands, and even catches a glimpse of Nephthys and Isis from afar. He wonders what they must be doing. They're not in a council now, obviously, so what's Osiris having them do? They're probably just overseeing the realms, and answering whatever pleas the mortals give. Not a very fun job, but it is their duty. Set would have appreciated having at least something to do. He stubbornly continues on his way, growing more and more disgruntled. Eventually, he pauses. He's made his way back to the front of the royal palace. What if he's just been passing by at the wrong time? If he approaches the gates and asks for an audience with the pharaoh... He decides to walk up to the gates. He's already starting to get some funny looks from the mortals around the area. The palace is in the middle of the largest city in the land. But they're not the only ones watching him. The mortals are just curious. But these eyes are hostile. As Set passes into the courtyard, a voice calls out to him from above. It's Osiris! The Dark Deity freezes. He wasn't expecting to actually get to see his brother. Osiris asks him what he thinks he's doing here. He sounds accusatory, wary. Set answers that he intended to speak with him. His hackles raise up at the apparent aggression from his brother. Is this just a waste of time? The pharaoh remarks that there is nothing left to be said. This irritates Set, and he challenges him, asking Osiris what he's so afraid of. He suggests that the king should come down and speak to him like a man instead of cowering up on the balcony. Osiris, of course, is still very wary of what the dark deity may be plotting. Putting himself on the same footing as Set is just asking for trouble. While the king may be the politically stronger of the two, the dark deity has him completely outmatched in terms of physical strength. Set's reputation as a trickster also doesn't help his case. And he is clearly agitated. Getting close to someone on such a short fuse in these circumstances is absolutely a bad idea. So, Osiris refuses, saying he knows better than to put his faith in Set, given his reputation. He points out Set's outburst in the council the other day, and lays into him, saying that he clearly has no capacity for civil discussion. Way to piss him off, Osiris! Set's temper gets the better of him, and he completely drops all composure. His blood feels like it's boiling in his veins. He demands to know what Osiris' problem is, using every colorful term in the book to call him out. Why would his brother suddenly just turn on him? Osiris was half of his world. All of it before he fell in love with Nephthys. He had worked himself half to death in service to his brother, and he defied all expectations by remaining committed to his duties. The older deities hadn't suspected such a mischievous and ornery god to become so dedicated and loyal, but he proved them wrong! All for this! How dare they! What had he done to deserve this treatment? As Set raises his voice, all of the flesh eaters go into high alert. While the dark deity is screaming profanities at his brother, they're the ones shoving him out of the temple courtyard. He tells Osiris that he'll be back, whether he wants him there or not. By the time Nephthys gets home, she comes across her husband pacing around like a caged animal. He's fuming, muttering under his breath and growling with rage. Obviously, she's confused to see him in such a state. She asks him what's wrong. She hasn't ever seen her husband this wound up before. He relays to her his interaction with Osiris, starting up his tirade of "How dare he!" all over again. Nephthys tries to listen as much as she can, but Set's words start running together in his anger. Most of it just sounds like snarling. Eventually, she just stops him, pleading for him to calm down. Thankfully, Nephi manages to get the dark deity to put a cap on his anger. For now. She knows that this is about Osiris and the others, so she asks Set if he's tried just talking to them. Set answers that he has, that he tried to speak with Osiris today. Did you blow up at him like this? She presses. Set admits that he did, and Nephthys sighs. This is a fine mess, isn't it? She says that his anger is probably why Osiris responded so harshly. She suggests that he should try to calmly speak with him. Her husband seems reluctant at first, but what Nephthys says next gets him to perk up a little. She says that, if it'll keep him from falling off the handle, she'll happily go with him to talk to their siblings. This is Set's battle for him to fight, but she'll be there for moral support if he needs it. The dark deity gladly accepts her offer, remarking that he's lucky he has her around to keep him sensible. They agreed to wait for tomorrow to go back to the palace, as, well, Set's probably done enough damage today. Nephthys tells Set to go to work on the sun barge as usual, and to focus on containing his anger from now on. He assures her he'll do his best. The next day, after Set's all rested up from his nightly duty, he spends most of the day trying to compose what he'll actually say to Osiris. Even when he's not angrily snarling and roaring, Set's not terribly eloquent, so he's a bit nervous that things may still go south. After all, Osiris has been jumping to conclusions very frequently. One wrong misstep might start another fight. It's very, very late in the day, close to sunset, when Nephthys finally finishes her duties. Osiris has the gods working most of the day in order to have time to meet after dark. This means that Nephthys and Set only have a short window in between now and when Set has to leave for the sun barge. So, they join up and hurry off towards the royal palace together while they can. Set fills his wife in on the basics of what he wants to say on the way there. When the two arrive at the palace, though, they're barred from entry entirely. The flesh-eaters won't let them in. Nephthys tries talking to them, seeing if there's any way they'll be able to speak with Osiris and Isis. They say that Nephthys can come right in, but that Set is forbidden from even entering the courtyard. The two of them back off from the gates just a little so they can talk about what to do. Set is already shaking with anger, but he's just barely able to keep it under wraps. He was counting on this to work out. Nephthys offers to go to the gates and find their siblings for him, to see if they'll be willing to make an exception for this audience, or if they'll come outside to speak with them. Her husband thanks her, telling her to go ahead. He'll wait outside for her return. He says it might help him cool off just a little too. She tells him she'll try to hurry things up, and heads back up to the gates. She's allowed entry, thankfully, and bids her husband farewell. Set watches her leave. He waits until she's out of sight, then takes off to the side of the palace. The stubborn dark deity isn't going to take no for an answer. He trusts Nephthys, of course, but he's got his own ideas on how to fix the problem. He sneaks around the palace walls and, with a little bit of signature trickery, makes it past the guards without incident. After crossing the rear courtyard safely, Set clambers on in through an open window and makes it inside. Now he has a chance to find Osiris himself. Back with Nephthys, the first person she runs into is Isis. Her sister is surprised to see her show up so long before the council starts, but she still greets Nephthys warmly anyway. Of course, the next thing out of her mouth is, "Why are you here so early?" Nephthys isn't the best at being direct with people, as she's usually very passive. Rather than outright challenging the Queen of the Duat, she instead chooses to make a simple statement. Set wanted to talk with Osiris, so I came with him, she explains. Isis drops her warm demeanor immediately. Her expression switches to concern. She tells Nephthys that Set is no longer allowed in the palace. Nephthys admits that she knows already, and she shrinks back. She'd hoped her sister wouldn't be on board with this. Isis starts to say that Set's too dangerous to keep around, and she reminds Nephthys of what Thoth told them. Nephthys counters that, for a god of knowledge, Thoth doesn't know anything. She points out that she'd never seen Set in such a state of anger before all this started, and that he's got every right to be indignant. He thinks he's being treated unfairly, and Nephthys agrees with him. If Set can't even speak with him anymore, then they've gone too far. Nephthys says she could understand being wary, but the level of paranoia that both the king and queen are displaying is getting ridiculous. Isis and Nephthys have never been at odds like this before. Isis is shocked at her sister's sudden conviction. She doesn't know what to say anymore. Everything makes sense in her head. Those warnings, Set's own words, the dark deity's anger, the rising tensions, all of it points to Set being a threat, a danger to balancing the Duat as a whole. Why can't Nephthys see it too? With Set, he's prowling through the palace and trying to keep as quiet as possible. He doesn't need to be tipping off the flesh-eaters outside that he's bypassed them after all. No need to start a rush or a panic. He passes the main hall where Isis and Nephthys are debating. He perks his ears as he passes, but he doesn't bother stopping. He's more concerned with finding his brother. Seeing as Osiris isn't out and about yet, it's a safe bet that he'll be back in his personal chambers. Set knows where to go. He practically grew up here, after all. Osiris is in the midst of getting himself ready for tonight's council. He's none the wiser to the dark deity creeping through his home. So, when he turns and sees tall, dark, and stormy in the doorway to his bedroom, he practically jumps out of his skin in surprise. The pharaoh immediately reaches for a weapon. Set tries defusing him, holding up his hands. Hey, I just came to talk, he says. Talking is never enough for you, Osiris points out, referring to the dark deity's explosive temper. He demands to know why Set is in his palace if he's so keen on being peaceful. The guards were given clear orders to keep him out. Set insists that breaking into the palace was necessary to even get the chance to have, in Osiris' own words, civil discussion. Osiris recognizes that, regardless of whether Set is telling the truth or not, he's cornered in his own home. He has no choice but to listen to his brother. Set asks him why things had to change, why he turned on him. Osiris counters that Set is the one who turned on him, and finally accuses Set of plotting to kill him. He tells him how Isis informed him of Thoth's vision, and how everything just so conveniently lined up with Apep's triumphant cries. Set is taken aback, and outraged. His carefully constructed composure is starting to fall apart. He snarls that he would never do such a thing. How could Osiris trust that stupid, baby-murdering ibis over his own brother? Their alignments had never meant anything to them before. Why did it suddenly matter now? Osiris flat out tells Set that he doesn't believe him, that he's nothing more than a deceitful fraud. Set roars, "Take it back!" and proceeds to list out everything he's given up, everything he's done for his brother's sake. He says that if Osiris really wants to settle things once and for all, then they'll have a duel. Right here, right now. In the other room, Isis and Nephthys halt their own debate. They can hear Set's roars from the other side of the palace. Hell, probably half of Duat can. Isis asks Nephthys what's going on. Nephthys had said that Set was waiting outside, not invading the palace. Nephthys says she doesn't know, that he was waiting outside last time she checked. Neither of them fully understand the situation. The girls are far better at compromise than their brothers are. They agree to disagree for now, so they can go investigate what the fuck is happening. Osiris and Set, as expected, are having a full-on duel in the other room. The king, unfortunately, is no match for the god of chaos. Set is trained for battle and has constantly fought for most of his adult life, while Osiris has fallen out of practice in his pursuit of political prowess. The fight is over just as fast as it started. Osiris is thrown to the ground, and he finds a sword pointed at his neck. He curses Set and tells him to finish him off, to finish what he started. He asks Set if he's happy, if he finally has what he wants. Set hesitates, then tosses the sword aside. "Finishing you off would only prove you right," he says, trying to quell the intense rage blazing within him. This isn't what he wanted. He can't let his anger get the better of him again. Unfortunately, this answer isn't good enough for Osiris. "I knew you'd be a traitor and a monster, Set," his brother declares, "but I never thought you'd be a coward." All he can see is red. No one, not even Osiris, calls him coward. He leaps at Osiris, claws and teeth bared. No weapon. He strikes out again and again, letting out all of the frustration, the anger that has built up over years and years of being put down and abused. Set himself is deafened by his own roars. All he can think is, "How could you? How could you? I gave up everything for you." His rampage only stops when he hears a voice other than his own. He halts. For the first time, he realizes Osiris isn't moving, not breathing. He whips around, looking for the source of the voice. It's Nephthys. And Isis! Isis screams. "What have you done?" The fire in his veins dies out, and in its place, all Set can feel is ice. Nephthys stares at him in shock, and Isis with fear. He takes a step towards them, not knowing what to do or to say. Isis shrieks and runs, taking Nephthys with her. He really did turn out to be a monster after all.